We will call to order the City of Southport Historic Preservation Commission Special Input Meeting for November the 13th, 2023. And we will ask Commissioner Alexis Graves to do the invocation. If you'll please stand.
Dear Lord, guide us as we go about the business of our beloved city, Southport. Help us to be fair, just, and compassionate as we deal with the citizens of Southport. Bless those that are here and the families that they represent. Bless those in our city and our nation at large. Thank you for this day and the days that are to come. In your holy name we say, Amen.
We'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is D, approval of the agenda. If the commissioners have had time to review the agenda.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to E. Under E on our agenda is Historic Preservation Draft Standards Open Forum, and we will turn our attention to Maureen Meehan, planner with the City of Southport, for a presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second of the two public input meetings for the Historic Preservation Commission and the draft design standards. Tonight's meeting is to introduce you to the Commission and to receive feedback and answer any questions about the draft standards that have been written and developed by the Commission. I will give a brief introduction and then I will turn it over to Chair Drew and the Commission to have the questions and answers for you. So last year in September, the Board of Aldermen adopted an ordinance to create the Preservation Commission. The Commission members were appointed and had training with the State Historic Preservation Office in November. December 7th, then, the Commission had their first meeting, and they meet the first Wednesday of every month. Since that first meeting in December, they have adopted their rules of procedure, they have adopted their goals, and they have updated the historic inventory within the the National Register boundary. And then, as we are presenting this evening, they're working on the design standards and want to have input from the public, anyone who is within the district or outside of the district, to give some input on what they are proposing. So these are just some houses around. The proposed local historic district at this point is following the National Register boundary from 1980 that was nominated and designated in 1980, and this is not a very good depiction on this screen, I apologize, but there is a link on the website that you can go to that you can zoom in and see very closely around the lots, which these are included. And like I said, this is just a draft, and we are welcome any input on these boundaries as well, if you would like. So this is just a brief introduction, so I would like to now turn it over to Chair Drew, and so he can introduce the Commission and go through a few other items, and then we'll open it up to the floor for some questions and answers. And this will be a town hall, so it won't be a public comment period. It will be a back and forth so that you can ask questions and get answers. So I will turn it over to the Chair.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, ma'am. Before we move any further, I would like to appoint Bonnie Bray and Tal West as voting members this evening, since we have a couple of members that are not present. Any discussion? Okay. We'll move on in our historic preservation draft standards and open forum. real quickly, just to do a member introduction, we'll go down the commission real quick and let each commissioner introduce themselves, tell something about them, for those of you that were not here for the first public input meeting. So we'll start with our vice chair, Rick Pekinas.
Good evening. My name is Rick McKennis. I live at 119 North Lord Street, which is the Robert Ruart Inn, if you're not familiar with that. And I'm glad you all are here tonight to provide input so we can get some more help in finishing up the standards. Thank you.
Josh?
My name's, better turn this on. My name's Josh McGee. I have been living in Southport for 5 years. I live in the hammocks, and I realized the other day I've been practicing architecture for 40 years, which is crazy, but anyway, thank you.
Alexis? Sorry, Tal.
Tal West. I am a North Carolina native, born and raised in Charlotte. Been living in Southport since August 2019. My wife and I bought our property here. However, in the Landing, I live at 6159 River Sound Circle. In the Landing, we bought our property there in April 1999. So I have been here since August of 2019.
Okay, Bonnie?
My name is Bonnie. Excuse me, I have laryngitis a little bit. My name is Bonnie Bray. My husband and I moved here in 2009 from Maryland, where we had just finished renovating a 200-year-old house that's on the Maryland Historic Trust. And I fell in love, we both fell in love with Southport, everybody does. And I'm very privileged to be part of this commission because we're doing really good work, and we're all very interested in preserving and protecting our, this wonderful place we all live in. So thank you for coming.
Alexis?
I'm Alexis Gore Graves. I am from Southport originally, and I've lived in lots of different places, but after I retired, I returned to Southport. I'm a retired educator, and I live at 510 North Lord Street.
I'm Jim McKee. I've been in and out of Southport starting in 1985. Been here permanently since 1992. I'm just a dumb historian.
And my name is Charles Drew. I'm the chairman of the commission. I'm a native of Southport, born and raised here. And I appreciate all of you being here for this public input meeting this evening. This is the second of many public meetings for you to be involved in. An ad hoc committee of the Board of Aldermen completed a Historic Preservation Commission ordinance in September of 2022. They then interviewed and appointed the Historic Preservation Commissioners at their October 13th, 2022 meeting. Since that time, the members of this commission have worked very hard and long to establish rules of procedure, goals, and design standards and guidelines. This commission has met twice monthly with many long hours of consideration and debate about different topics. I'd like to express to each of you before we go on in our presentation this evening, after last month's public input meeting in October, there were 10 to 12 citizens that spoke about the Historic Preservation Commission guidelines. This commission met in regular session on Wednesday, November the 1st, 2023. At that meeting, each of the comments were taken from the 10 to 12 citizens that spoke and were addressed, and changes were made to the guidelines. For instance, the wording has been changed in regard to paint standards. We have discussed testimonies from individuals pertaining to certificate of appropriatenesses of how people that do not live in proximity to the place in question will have standing, because that was brought to our attention at the last meeting. We've made sure that all minutes are recorded and online and are being kept up to date. We've discussed the historic registry of Franklin Square Park. We've discussed the condition of the Brunswick County Courthouse and have a recommendation forthcoming to present to the Board of Aldermen. This commission made sure that a mass mailing was done with information about this meeting. We changed the language concerning docks and walkways. We updated the language about the use of vinyl, aluminum siding, and other building materials, and we've updated the landscaping information in the design guidelines. So this commission has heard your comments, your suggestions, and your ideas. We've put them into this living and breathing document. So the first draft is now a second draft proposal that we're dealing with, but it is still not a complete, concrete, set-in-stone document. This meeting tonight will reveal more public comment from each of you that have attended that will be interwoven into this document prior to it going to the planning board. Once the planning board has reviewed this document and had public comment as well and made a recommendation, then it will proceed to the Board of Aldermen for review and necessary changes as well. The commissioners at this table, we want your feedback. We are here tonight to listen to your ideas and your discussion. It's important that we have you comment again tonight, participate in the process, email us, show up at our meetings, and give us feedback of what you like and what you don't like about the design standards of the Historic Preservation Commission. Like I said last month, and I'll say again, Southport belongs to you. This is your city. You hold the future of Southport in your hands. Your comments, your suggestions, and your ideas are welcome and will help this commission shape the future of the historic district. As chairman of this commission, it is my intent to have full participation by our citizens and our advisory boards. Citizen input is necessary because we do not want this particular situation to fail, but we want it to succeed. The goals of this commission we will talk about on the presentation are of historic value. They are called preserve, promote, and prevent. We must preserve the heritage of Southport by protection. We must promote conservation, education, and cultural enrichment. We must prevent demolition, destruction, and the removal of historical character and significance. So this commission has woven consideration and compromise into these guidelines, and I'm reminding you what you have tonight, again, is just a draft proposal that will go through a very thorough process. This commission has looked extensively at many cities and towns, and we have read and studied their historic guidelines, some that are very extreme, very restrictive, some that are very lenient. We have not copied and pasted any guidelines, and have not stamped any city's guidelines. We have looked at different cities' guidelines, but we have reviewed them and then adapted these guidelines to fit Southport. This commission, as you have been made aware tonight, has 3 members that live in the historic district that was established in 1980. That is the first 100 lots that were established in this town. And that has been on the National Historic Registry since 1980. However, there is no protection with that district until we vote in some guidelines. That means anybody within those first 100 lots can do anything. I had one citizen come to me and say, in the first 100 lots, could somebody build an igloo and sell ice cream cones? Yes. No. Somebody could build an igloo and sell ice cream cones. They could, because there's no guidelines. So, also on this board, you have 3 members that live in the historic district. You also have 3 natives that are from Southport that were born and raised here. We have other members that are very passionate about this city. Everyone seated at this table wants to preserve what we have in Southport. The thing that brought the newcomers to this town is character, quaintness, and the only way that this will happen is if we work together to make this a document that can preserve and keep Southport's character as it is today. This commission must work with the Board of Aldermen, and the citizens must have input. So, in closing, we're not here to regulate or restrict. We're here to collectively preserve, promote, and prevent demolition of Southport charm and character. This evening, we welcome you to comment, ask questions, give suggestions and your ideas. We'll take your input into consideration. We will take notes. And as we go back at our next meeting, we will incorporate what you tell us into the guidelines. This is a draft that will be reworked as the commission receives your input. So thank you for being here tonight and being a part of the process. I'll continue and I'll direct your attention to the VI board, and I'll go through this very quickly. The historic preservation goals are to preserve the character, the heritage, and the landmarks of Southport, to promote citizen outreach, to provide education on benefits of preservation, and to prevent the loss of character and the loss of historically significant places. The design standards, according to General Statute 160D-947C, rules and standards and requirements, no enforcement unless standards are adopted. The new construction, alterations, additions, moving, and demolition will be regulated by the standards. Certificate of appropriateness with minor works, and this board will act as a quasi-judicial board. Southport's design standards, you see on the board, has account for a variety of age, architecture, significance throughout the district. Each certificate of appropriateness is considered individually. A consideration is made with the whole block in conjunction with the consideration. We do not regulate paint colors. We do allow composite materials. We do allow metal roofs. Do not require retrofitting. It's not like you're going to have to take your property and retrofit it after the fact. Preservation. A few things that were changed as of the last meeting. We simplified the paint standard wording. The landscaping additions have been made to the design standards. Roof material allowances were clarified. Existing material maintenance and replacement for windows and siding. We removed confusing wording about dock and pier construction standards. We researched the historic registry of Franklin Square Park, and we're supporting maintenance of the public historic structures, especially the old courthouse or the former city hall on East Moore Street. Tonight's meeting is a town hall question and answer meeting. We'll ask you if you have something that you would like to say, if you will come to the podium, turn the microphone on. We'll have one speaker at a time. Please state your name and your address for the record. And we ask that you please respect everyone and don't interrupt or talk over someone that's speaking. Your comments and questions are important to us. I think we did have a sign-up sheet at the beginning, and you do have that? You have it? Madam Clerk, who is the first person that has signed up to speak?
Royce Potter.
All right, Mr. Potter, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and your address.
Good evening, I'm Royce Potter. I live at 112 Frank Drive. I own the property Potter Seafood at 90 Yacht Basin Street. Really don't have a lot for you, questions or anything, but just wanted to sign up. I guess my main thing would be, I saw the diagram of what's included, the original 100 lots. I noticed it extends out into the river, like over to Bald Head. Is that like a view, vista, preservation type of thing?
You want to answer that?
It's the View, Vista, and Battery Island is included. So that I just zoomed in so that you could see the lots closer, but it does include Battery Island.
Okay, all right. So that's the purpose of that, is to maintain the view. Okay. I guess, can that area be changed, or is that something that's locked in now?
In what sense? I'm sorry.
The designated area that was shown here, the original 100 lots in that view area, can that be added to or taken away from still?
Yes.
Okay. And I think you kind of answered this, Mr. Drew, as far as the timeline of all of this. It sounds like after this meeting, after this input meeting, things are going to start going to the Board of Aldermen, Planning Board, and all that. So what kind of a time frame do you think before this is set in stone?
Well, after this meeting, we will have another regular meeting. We meet the first Wednesday of every month. We'll have another regular meeting. We'll take what comments we get and talk about them. And then I'm looking, probably it will go to the planning board, maybe January is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
And then I don't know how long the review will take from the planning board before it goes to the Board of Aldermen. But when it goes to the planning board, they will have a couple of public hearings as well and give the public time to comment on things as well.
All right. I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
After it goes to the planning board, will it come back to us before it goes to the alderman?
I think there may even be a joint session, maybe with the Historic Preservation Commission and the planning board, after the planning board has a time to review it in case there needs to be some questions. But I'm sure it could come back to us after it goes to the planning board before it goes to the Board of Aldermen. I don't think that'd be a problem.
Just in case there's a lot of changes.
Madam Clerk?
Kurt Sheets.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kurt Sheets. I live at 314 East Bay. First, I want to thank you for considering the board considering all the things that were brought up last meeting. Looks like you did a bunch of work and listened to everybody. Thank you. Every morning I walk down Bay and around the Yacht Basin and up West. And looking at those houses, this is sort of a question about as the drafts exist tonight. I have a question about, as I walked around those areas and starting at my house all the way down, there's aluminum siding, there's vinyl siding, there's brick painted, there's composite board, there's asbestos siding. So as it exists tonight, the draft, let's say somebody on West who has vinyl or aluminum siding, and they want to redo their outside of their house. They're going to come to you for a certificate, correct? What will you tell them if they want to put, let's just say if they want to put vinyl back up? Let's start there. What would you tell them?
If I'm not speaking for the whole commission, I'm speaking for myself, but from what I understood from the last meeting that we had, we put a provision in that if the house already has vinyl, that they can put vinyl back on the house.
Okay.
Now, if the house does not have vinyl, they would not be able to add vinyl.
Okay. I'm
If the
just
house
curious.
has
I
a-
have no
right.
opinion. I have an opinion,
And
but I'm just
if I'm
curious.
speaking out of turn, somebody please speak up. And I mean, any of you are willing to, or able to answer, but if the house has aluminum siding, we put a provision in that if it has aluminum siding right now, they would be able to put aluminum siding back on the house.
Okay. I would really, and I agree, I would really like to ask you, when Robert Carroll was here last time, and he was talking about redoing his house and the reveal on the hardy board and how hardy board can have this much reveal or this much reveal, and how the wood was always 4 inches. And again, the hardy board can slide, so it can be 6 or 4, whatever. I would suggest that as a board, you seriously consider the look from the street. I mean, if you want to say, let's use hardy board, or you can use vinyl, or you could use aluminum, then I would say, but you have to match the reveal that makes it look like it's wood from the street.
And that is correct, Dr. Sheets. That is what this commission would do. It is the look from the street that we're concerned with.
In, God bless, I can't think of his name. The architect, the other architect that was here. Bandera, God bless it. Sorry, I'm getting old. They were and I spoke to, on that walk, I ran into two builders who were already fixing houses on West and I think both of them were on West. And they said, it's an issue, we talked about, Mr. Bandera said that there's an issue with having to match that window size again. And again, I would say, if you could use a modern window and not have to replace that exact width, he said that a window that might cost $500 costs $2,500 to match the width and height of a house that was, again, from the street. That would be my ask of you all. If from the street you can make a nice, historic looking window that might have to be 2 inches bigger than the one that's there, I would hope that you would consider that. Because I think, again, it's the look from the street that you're looking for. And thank you again for changing some of those things you changed. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Go ahead.
You me? I don't want to speak for Rich Bandera, but what I understood from Rich, and he's right, is that if you buy a current window that has true divided light and it has the profiles and everything that was there, say 60 years ago, it's probably going to run you $2,500, $3,000. But you can buy a window now of just about any width you want, because I've just done this recently on 3 projects. And again, like Charles has said, what we're trying to do is keep the look consistent, or keep the look from the street that is consistent with the intent of the neighborhood. So. Right, yeah, because, I mean, it's really difficult to replace a true divided light window that's 60 years old, you know, at a reasonable rate now, so. But I do think, and this is just my opinion and other people can speak, but I do think in terms of the width and the height and all that, you can match that at no additional cost. That's, yeah. It's the profile and the sash and how it's fabricated. Yeah.
So you're not going to get into that? You're not going to get into the profile, or you are?
We would like for it to look very similar. It's all about the look, and there's a lot of windows out there now that look like they still have the profile. And from the street, you're probably not going to be able to see the difference. If you got up there 2 feet away, you would know, but we're more concerned with the look from the street.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, Madam Clerk, who's next?
Gabriel Azado.
All right. My name's Gabriel Azado. I am a born and raised Southportonian. I moved back here because of the way Southport is. Growing up around the historic homes my entire life, I definitely truly value that. I do currently I bought a house, moved from Charlotte, the bigger city, back home because of the value I thought Southport brought to me. I bought a lot that is currently in the zone. It has a small, actually on the 1980 study, it is the last house reviewed, 361 out of the first 361 houses reviewed. The thing I note about the 1980 study is how jagged sort of that borderline is. Everyone says, or it's been brought up earlier today, that it's the first 100 lots. In actuality, there's parts of the lots that are missing from the jagged piece. One thing to consider is back in that 1980 study, most of these homes which were built have since aged. I know in, I forget his name, Mr. Eisenberg, or the person who did that 1980 study, Eisenberg, yes, Linsberry. There are lots of areas that would be considered in that 2010 report as within the historic district. I just wanted to bring that up. Second would be in that lot that I purchased 2 years ago, right next door, that the first 100 lot that I purchased in town was split in half. And right next door in that same first 100 lot, there's a brand new modern style house. Why do I have to be held to the standards now when 2 years ago that person built this current house? And again, I'm not saying that I disagree with what this board is trying to do. I agree that some historic nature of Southport should be established. But I just wanted to bring that up as well. And then lastly, second, I have one more thing, or two more things. One is concerning setbacks. I saw in the minutes of a previous meeting was the change of setbacks that was somewhat talked about between members. Would downtown, the inside the historic district, would that be held to the same setback standards currently? I mean, I know nothing's been drafted yet, but is that something that is up for consideration as far as setbacks from the property line for new builds? That's just something I wanted to ask. And then lastly, is specific to something that's already in the, it's on page, let me find it, I think it's page 4, or yes, page 4 of the design standards. It's just one sentence that I just wanted clarification on, is note that interior of a publicly owned building also falls under HPC review. And I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I missed out on the last note, which was the old city hall. What I remember is this old city hall, but historically was the courthouse. From an internal, as I know the city will be footing the bill for that, whatever the renovations would be. I just wanted, if there would be more city insight or a citizen vote on what changes would be made concerning that building, because as much as I want that building to be historically preserved, I also don't want the higher taxes that go with it. So I just wanted to bring those things up. I don't know if there's any public comment that anyone would like to make on any of those points, but just wanted those things to be heard.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rosado, for your questions, and we'll look into those. Madam Clerk?
Joseph Pierce.
Welcome, Joey.
I do have a question for you, Charles, that you were talking a while ago that somebody could put an igloo and sell snow cones. In the commercial district, yes, but not in the residential.
You're right. That's correct.
My name is Joe Pierce. Most people know me as Joe. I live at 320 College Avenue, which is the house everybody's talking about. The worst house in the 100 original blocks or lots. We moved in that house, we moved to Southport's in 1963. So I've lived here all my life, I think maybe Bill is probably the only one in here that has lived here longer than I have. I want to say I'm not exactly for this historical district yet. I'm not against it. Everything, all our lives are run by rules, regulations, and law. Some of us live by it, some people don't. The problem I have is not leading by example. You know, you're sitting here, the board is wanting to do all this historical district, but they're not going about it right, in my book, in my opinion. If you are truly want to preserve the history of Southport, why not start with putting the road names back to what they originally were? You know, I mean, half of the board, I guarantee you, couldn't tell you what the roads were back in the day. Very few could. I can one or two maybe, without going out and looking at the sign out here. But most of you have seen the book that Susie Carson wrote about the city of Southport. There is so much wrong in that book, it's not funny. That my house was, according to that book, I think 1935. It's not. That house, according to the insurance adjuster, was built probably in 1890. It is not nailed together, it is pegged together. The plaster walls, it's not what I thought was fiberglass, is not. It's horsehair. How long did they quit using horsehair? But the thing of it is that house is tied up in an estate. So it comes under legally a whole different ballgame. There are 4 heirs. Nobody can agree. But I hate that it got to the shape it did. My mother was 86 when she passed away 7 years ago. My sister and I went in there and tried to do some work. It upset her till she got sick. I told her, stop, we're done, we're finished. We're not going to do nothing. People are just going to have to live with it. Because she was more important to me than the house or anything in this city. That was my mother. Back in the day, which most of you, Bill probably remembers, this whole town, it's changed, some for the good, some for the better. But when I was being raised here, every woman in Southport was your mother. You go down here, you get in trouble or do something stupid, you're going to get whipped. Probably by you or whatever woman saw you do it. Then you were going to get another whipping when you got home from your mother. That's how Southport was. Unfortunately, it's not like that anymore. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's grown. A city has to grow to prosper. But all I'm asking is lead by example. Several people have bought up the courthouse. Right now, it seems to me it's more important that they're talking about everything else than the courthouse. Go look at it. If a child goes back there and gets hurt now, you got a lawsuit. Now you want your taxes to go up? Go look at it. It's not what I'm telling you. This ain't something that happened last week. This has been going on for a long time. Windows boarded up, seals rotting out, the gas tank that's in the back, the gate that's off, and all the vines growing up. I just got a letter from the city on a property I own that's never had a house on it. But they want to tell me, you got 12 days to clean it. But I can't even get back to it on their right-of-way that's overgrown. Go look at the Bonnets Creek sign, how it's overgrown. How many people pass that compared to my lot out in the middle of the block, down a dirt road that you can't even get to? It's just crazy. Just things need to slow down. They're pushing it too hard, too quick. And they're going to wind up getting sued. That's where it's headed. And I hate to see that. But they need to slow down and look at this thing. And like I said, lead by example. If they were true to their heart, wanted this to be historical correct, start with the names on the streets. You know, I know you can't change Moore Street and you can't change Howe Street, it's state highway. You could, but it would take a little doing. But other streets are not. And go look at them, the shape they're in. You know, how do you sit here and tell somebody You can't do this, but I can do it. There you go. Rules for thee, but not for me. And there's a lot of that going on. Not just with the historical district, but with other things in the city. And people are getting sick of it. Like I said, I'm not against the historic district. I'm not exactly all for it yet. But the thing of it is, you got to realize, just like you're saying, if that house, I wanted to tear it down. It's because suppose I don't have the money to fix it up. Then who's going to decide whether it gets fixed up or stays like it is? Whose decision would that be? Would that be up to the building inspector? Would I have to go in front of a board and ask them, can I tear it down? Well, there's ways around it.
Well, are you asking that question to us?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you would have to apply for a certificate of appropriateness for demolition, if I understand that correctly.
Okay. So then who would decide that it was beyond repair?
It would come to the Historic Preservation Commission for a hearing, and then once that hearing is done, if you did not agree with that, then it could go to Superior Court, is how a quasi-judicial board works.
So there goes my taxes again. That's just don't make sense to me. Like I said, it's not that I'm against saving Southport. God knows I wish I could turn it back to when I was a teenager.
But I will say this, Joey, when I was code enforcement officer, I ran into a lot of properties in the original historic district that we're talking about now that was heir property.
Yeah.
And you know as well as I do, well, I believe you even helped tear some of them down.
Yes, I did.
Because they had to be demolished because they were beyond repair.
Right.
So a lot of times with heir property and estate property, when siblings can't agree, that's what happens. That's what we're trying to prevent as much as we can, because we would like to preserve those structures instead of seeing them get in disrepair. But I do understand the process with heir property.
Yeah.
You know, that's a bad situation because a lot of times one heir will not agree.
Well, unfortunately, there's two that won't agree with the other two. So,
and then you're stuck, and
that's it.
Nothing can be done. So that would be a case that, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do anything with that.
Right.
Because when the heirs won't agree to what can be done.
Well, I have tried to do what I can. Most of you that have been by there have seen I've done a lot to it. And I'm doing my best. I'm retired now. I don't make the kind of money I used to. But I'm not gonna sell the property. I'm not gonna sell it. The others may sell, but I'm not selling. So, unfortunately, it's just a bad situation, and I'm caught in it. But
and another thing, the way this commission is set up, just so you understand, I mean, it's a case-by-case situation. So your situation is totally different than other people's situations.
Right.
So those have to be judged on those cases.
Right. But like I said, there's rules for me, rules for thee, but not for me. A prime example was a letter was sent to one of the heirs about the lot. But then you go look over here at the city, the old courthouse, the old city garage, or the old city hall, vines growing up the thing. That garage, the LP gas tank back there, look at it. Where's the door at? It's been laying inside since before the city left from there and moved into the new city hall. So how can the board sit there and tell me, any board, whether it's the preservation board or whoever, that I've got to do this, this, and this, but we don't have to do it? You lead by example. I retired, I was on the fire department and retired from the fire department. I don't think I ever asked any of the guys that were under me. I served as a firefighter, I served as a lieutenant, I served as a captain. I never expected anybody to do something that I wouldn't do, or I never demanded them to do something that I don't even do. The rules that went for me went for them. And the rules that were for them went for me too. Just because I was an officer didn't change it. That's the problem I have with the historical, the way it's being done. Because you lead by example. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question? How many heirs are involved? 4. Are they children? Do they have children? Have any heirs died?
No.
Okay.
Well, yes, there were 5.
Okay.
My brother died, but of course he passed away before my mother did.
Well, you do understand his children are now part of it too, so.
No, he didn't have any children.
Oh, thank goodness. No.
I do, I've got 7 boys.
Okay.
Well, I'm the dad of 7 boys,
I
but the
understand.
father,
Yes.
you know. So I've tried to explain to them, something happens to me, and
It involves
this
the
went
7
through council.
boys. Yes.
You know, something happens to me, now instead of having 4 degree, you got 7 more plus 3.
It's time to see a lawyer. They can help you. They can help.
But there you go, I'm retired.
Yeah.
What does a lawyer charge?
It's not as expensive as I thought it was going to be.
It's quite a bit more. I mean, because I've talked to a lawyer for, I've spent several $1,000s talking to a lawyer. So that's where it stands.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joey, for your comments, and we'll take those into consideration. And I will tell you that that was at the last meeting that we are making a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen concerning the courthouse and other properties that are the city to make sure.
And to get up on that, you know what I'm going to do.
Right.
Because it shouldn't be that way. It's not something that just happened overnight. That's been like that before the city ever moved out of the city garage. You know, so they're going to cost me money as a taxpayer, and I don't like that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Rosado, you have a comment? She'll bring you the microphone.
My question is, who currently is responsible for upkeeping the city hall? Is the town is currently responsible for that?
It belongs to the city of Southport, yes, sir.
Isn't it leased currently, or there's a memorandum of understanding
I think there's a
place?
memorandum of understanding. There's a group that's working towards that. Bonnie, you want to answer that question?
Excuse me. The group, there is an, oh boy, this is bad. There is an MOU, can you hear me? Between the city of Southport and Up Your Arts. I'm a founding member of Up Your Arts, so I wrote the MOU, so I know a lot about it. It is not being leased currently. There are several steps that will remain. Well, actually, the one big step is defining the relationship. If the city is going to go forward with Up Your Arts plans for proposed plans for an art center, then the next step that has to happen is the city would have a public-private partnership with a new board for the Center for the Arts in Southport. None of it is inked in. The board does exist. The organization, the Center for the Arts in Southport, is incorporated. It will be a 501c3. All of it has been happening over many years' time. While the city, the one responsibility that the city has had, Up Your Arts has had to do a number of different things, reach a number of milestones for this to continue. But the one thing that the city does is maintain the insurance and upkeep of the building. You can't go inside. It's without suiting up. It's a toxic waste dump inside. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but Up Your Arts has paid for a lot of studies to determine if it's structurally feasible. Architecturally, can it accommodate things that you would expect to see in an art center? All of that has been done, and now that we have the board in place, that just happened last month, the new board will be negotiating with the city to determine what happens next. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, is there anyone else signed up? Okay, so there's no one else signed up, but we're going to open the floor for anybody if you just come to the podium or have Cheyenne to bring you the microphone. Joey, you got another question before we go to the next?
Oh, the memorandum of understanding. Yeah, there's actually 3. No, okay, sorry, MOU, yeah.
State your name and your address, sir.
I am Pete Hyde. I live at 2127 Maple Leaf Drive, and I admire your commission. I was on the Dilworth Commission board for 18 years. We moved into Dilworth in 1970. The city of Charlotte had written off Dilworth. They were turning the old houses into boarding houses and renting rooms out. You couldn't give away a house in Dilworth. The first thing that we were able to do, and Charlotte had never done it before, was do a small area plan, which is going to have to be done by the aldermans here. That's a plan in which we said business can have this area, the hospital, Memorial Hospital, wants this area over 30 years. The doctors want their area, and this was done through the use of city. We used interns from one of the colleges, state, I think, 2 graduate student interns, and we developed a small area plan which said, you can do this in this area, this is where we want the growth to go, this is where we don't want the growth to go, this is where we want multiple family housing, we want single family housing. It will make your commission so much easier when you don't have to argue with somebody that wants to put the teepee with the cones in the middle of a residential area, because it is not zoned for that. You have different zonings from single family to multiple family. You keep the developers out from going into a single family area which is zoned MF or single family and try and put MF6 in there. It'll make your job so much easier if you can get city council to give you an area plan. After we had the area plan done, which was the first time Charlotte had ever done one, it made life so much easier on us turning Dilworth around. Dilworth, a house in Dilworth, and I don't know anybody knows Dilworth, on Berkeley was selling between $15,000 and $25,000. A house on Berkeley will cost you $1 to $2 million now. Those houses were being turned in to boarding houses. Okay, we did incorporate, and we were much delighted in getting a historic district. We went to Boston and Philadelphia and where else to look at the historic districts, how they worked, what they did. We thought we had arrived when we finally got approved for the historic district. It creates a very serious fine line deal with the commission. I thought it was wonderful. I voted for it. But the first deal that I had to do with the commission was an elderly lady 3 doors down from us there in Dilworth wanted to put back a flower box on her window which had been knocked off during Yugo. She called the historic district thinking that everybody has to comply to it. They sent her at least a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch packet, which she had to fill out to put up a flower box. We put it up one Saturday afternoon without the historic district. It's a very, very fine line that you're walking, dealing with what should be monitored by the historic district and what should not be monitored. But it'll make your life very, very much simpler if you get a small area plan. When I say small area, like we had in Dilworth, defining what can be built there, what can't be, what can be done, can make your life a whole lot easier. And you have a very fine line of, my next door neighbor ran into it with the historic district when one of the commissioners asked him what kind of caulking was he going to use in the window. But a lot of good things were done, and it upset an awful lot of other people. Good luck in your endeavors.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, I thought of one more thing. My question is, and I'm probably gonna step on some toes, but hey, it is what it is. Between Leonard Street, down Atlantic Avenue, up West Street to Howe Street, just the single-family residential homes, there are 40. There are 16 VRBOs in that 2 block. Out of the other 30, there are maybe 10 that are owner-occupied. Will this do anything to curtail some of this VRBO?
I mean, what we're doing won't have anything to do with the VRBO, but our UDO addresses that. They have short-term rental policies and ordinances that the city has in place now.
I tell you, there is one thing that would stop a lot of the problems with the VRBOs. If you don't live next to one, you don't know. I've got 3 across the street and 1 next door that every week is a different person. You can ask your police chief, he went through it. It's real fun in the morning with a neighbor naked in the hot tub puking over your fence. This kind of stuff could be curtailed, because I'm not going to call the police. I'm going to call the owner. Why not require his phone number to be posted on the property where everybody can see it? After getting about 10 calls of stupid stuff, some of the problems would go away, I think. Maybe that's something that the board needs to look at. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, who else? Yes, sir. Can you come, or she can bring you the microphone.
Robert Palmetier, 308 North Drive. Has individual properties been identified as whether they're going to be in the district or not? I ask that because looking at your map, my property, the map goes through maybe 1/4 of my property and 1/3 of my house. My property is part of 3 of the original 100. Am I in or am I out? Would be my question.
You're in the district, and yes, we did do a personal inventory of each block in the district.
And we'll all be notified of that?
Yes, sir.
My name is Michelle Vargo. I live in the Sacred Heart Church house on West and North Caswell. I spoke at the last meeting, and I appreciate the work that the commission has done. I've read the updated draft. I appreciate they took into consideration some of the things that I brought up at the last meeting. I have a couple of questions that may be specific to my house, I'm not sure. In the draft guidelines, you talk about landmarks. There's a lot of discussion about landmarks. Can you define for me what a landmark is?
As far as a historic landmark, is that what you're asking, or just a landmark?
Throughout the guidelines, it talks about the defining landmarks or determining landmarks and preserving landmarks. I don't know what that refers to. I specifically asked that question because I have a somewhat unusual house, and I'm particularly concerned that it might be treated differently than another residence.
Your house would not be treated as a landmark because
Okay.
it's in a residential neighborhood. And when I'm thinking of landmarks, now this is just my personal opinion, I'm thinking about the Brunswick County Courthouse, Franklin Square Park, the Indian Trail Tree, the Yacht Basin, the Garrison, you know, specific.
Okay. That's all right. So the other question I have is about corner lots, which I also have a corner lot. It's somewhat addressed in the guidelines, but it's not specific in all respects, and so I'm wondering how you would treat a corner lot.
A corner lot would be treated differently, specifically because you have two road views and street views from the corner lot. So that would be considered because you're going to have a front view and a side view.
So you're saying the side view would have to would conform to the same regulations as the front view?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Potter?
Speaking of the yacht basin, just what, if anybody wants to chime in on it, what kind of views do you have on that? And then how is this going to affect the commercial properties versus the residential properties?
Anybody want to answer? I do believe we did discuss some about vistas, and I think that would the yacht basin would that be considered a vista?
It would be, and I know that the commission did speak at one point of making the yacht basin a very different district so that it would be a different set of standards would be for that. So that's one, we did speak of that at one of your meetings, but no action was taken at that time.
Yes, and if I'm correct, the yacht basin, the entire yacht basin is not in that first 100 lots.
It is within the National Register boundary.
It
though.
is.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak?
It has to do with the makeup of the commission itself. I might have this wrong, but I believe in reading it, it doesn't require a certain percentage of the participants in the board to live within the historic district boundaries. I think there should be a requirement that at least some amount of the people on the board live in the historic district themselves.
Okay. Okay, that's something you're going to have to take to the Board of Aldermen. That's something we can't do. The Board of Aldermen are the ones that set the ordinance for the Historic Preservation Commission. So I would invite y'all to make that recommendation at a board. It's still going to be a decision by the board. They would have to institute a percentage that live in the historic district. So, because the Board of Aldermen are the ones that created the commission. So that's going to be your proper channel to go through to get that changed. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I agree. I mean, But that's going to be something that the Board of Aldermen is going to have to address.
My question is, as all of us know, or most of it that are in the original 100 lots know, nothing is in where it's supposed to be. It's either partly on the right of way or whatever. My mother's house was the same way. It's probably 2 foot on the side and 2 foot, 4 foot in the front is in the right of way. If something happened to that house, now am I going to be allowed to say it burned? Lightning struck it and it burned, or whatever. A hurricane takes it out, or whatever. Am I going to have to go by the new setbacks and all of that? Or can I build back where it was?
I'll try to answer that question for you. I would say that that's going to be a zoning question, not a Historic Preservation Commission question. And I would say, yes, you would have to go with the new setbacks.
But suppose my lot, which I'm fortunate enough, there are 3 lots there, but if I was on one lot, there's no way I could go and build back on a 33-foot wide lot with that house, because that house is 22 foot wide and meet the setbacks. There's no way. I mean, I could build something like down here at by Provisions, which most people wouldn't like, you know. So that would be something that should be brought about, because there are a lot of the houses that don't have the room, you know, and if something happened to the house for whatever reason, and you've got one 33-foot lot, you should be able to build back without question what you had, you know, especially if it's Mother Nature took it out, or a fire, or, you know, something along that lines.
Mo, do you want to address that?
If I may, the 33-foot lots do have setback exceptions, so you can have reduced setbacks already for those lots. If it is a non-conforming structure and there is damage, you can replace it in the same footprint. That is within the UDO.
Even if it's totally, because at one time, the city said that if you, how can I put it? If you demolished a house, or a house disappeared off of a lot, then even if it was 33 foot, you had to go back to the new setbacks, or you weren't going to build.
There's a couple different variables, but just in general, if you're on a 30-foot lot and it is destroyed by fire, or if you can rebuild it. Now, if you're in the flood zone, that's a whole different set of story.
I understand that.
And also with the setback exceptions, it's dependent on the size of your lot. So your setbacks are reduced by the size of your lot, so it can go down.
But there are a lot of houses in the historical
absolutely.
district.
And also we were speaking, the commission was talking with staff about having a new zoning district within the historic district to address those types of issues, so that the setbacks don't have to be we don't have a 25-foot setback when all of your homes are very close to this lot line, so that it keeps the character of the block, and that's one of the most important things.
Yeah. Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mo, Mr. Potter has a question or a comment.
Sorry to take everybody's time. I think mentioning on what the gentleman over there mentioned earlier as far as exact boundary lines, and the comments you made about the yacht basin last time, some places were, some places weren't. You know where I'm at specifically. Am I specifically in it, and what about the other restaurants? Is it only the houses along the yacht basin, or is it across the road on the water side, being the restaurants and the commercial buildings as well, or where's the exact boundaries for that, and will we be notified of it, and just the exact issues there?
Yes, sir. Let me try to get back to that slide. That's the proposed historic district boundaries. And probably what we'll need to do, Royce, is we'll probably need to get a better looking map so that we can pass that out to everybody. But yes, everybody in that district will be notified. Yeah, so we're gonna. Yes, they're in that. They're in that district. Yes, sir. That is correct.
There is a really good map online that shows the historic studies that were done. Your property is in that, but it's through the GIS Brunswick County website. They have the historic version that shows each house as well, and that historic study on each house.
And each commissioner took a block in that district and went through and done an inventory of each house. So we have pictures of each residence or commercial building in the historic district, what materials that they have. So that's all on file at the city hall as well. And we can always share that information too.
And someone made a suggestion at the last meeting that we associate the map parcel ID with the property that's in the district, which I think is a good idea because a lot of people go by parcel IDs. I think that'd be helpful.
It's a situation where you have an old wooden building on the water. Obviously, he's one of the guys that's going to be most affected by a storm. How will the rules affect him? Let's say, you've had 3 feet of water in there previously. Let's say he loses his roof. What will he be able to build back? Is that what you're trying to ask? But if you have, I don't want to speak for you. I'm just trying to. If his building goes down, what will he be able to build back from a historic standpoint?
If his building goes down, I think that CAMA is going to be involved very, very much so before we get involved. I think it's going to be what CAMA allows him to build back before we can even get involved with that. Really is, I think, the answer to the question. Mo, do you want to elaborate?
Well, let's say CAMA allows him to build back.
Okay, if CAMA allows him to build back, then it's gonna come before us, and we're gonna work with Royce for him to build back something that's comparable to what he had. Sure it is. Yes, sir. And that's what we're trying, and that's what we're trying to preserve is the character. That's a perfect example of a landmark that we don't want to lose. What would the Yacht Basin, that's the last operating fish house in the Yacht Basin. When I was growing up, there were fish houses all through there. And that's the last one, and we don't want to lose that.
Put something in that's not going to allow that to happen.
Right. Okay, who else?
So if a hurricane came through and say wiped out half of the district, then would it be on a case-by-case build back, or would it be say, okay, everybody, you can go back like you were, as far as building houses or whatever?
I think if we have a devastating storm like that, I think the city is going to be at the position just like they were in 1954 when it happened with Hurricane Hazel.
That was a little before my time.
They're going to want to work to get the place back up to the way it was.
Right.
I think you're going to have people that want to work with you, and that's what this commission's about. And I feel like we've made progress to show the citizens that we do want to work with people, and we want to have compromise in these guidelines to be able to help people.
To a certain point, I agree with that they're willing to work with us, but like I said before, show me something. You do something first and show me that it's, that you're going to lead and set the example by leading. And over there, again, the City Hall was a perfect example. How can you tell me what I've got to do when you're not making the city do their part? There you go back to the rules for thee, but not for me.
Well, and we have an alderman in our audience tonight, and she's taken all of this in and will address this, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the floor is open. Who else has a question, input? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to go down the line of the commissioners, and I want to make sure that each of them have an opportunity to speak tonight before we move on to other business. So we'll start with Commissioner Bray.
I really like this kind of thing, and I'm really glad that I think it was Dr. Sheets. Are you the one when you came to one of our meetings and said you need to have a public meeting? Was that you? It's Pete. Bless him. This is, yeah, this is, yeah. Yeah, it was such a great idea. He came to one of our regular meetings, and you all have shown tonight and the meeting we had in October, again, some really important stuff. You really participated. It's just been great. I'm always learning a lot, but thank you very much for bringing your concerns and being willing to step out a little bit. And it's great. I think we're going to have a great set of guidelines as a result. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tal?
Okay. I certainly enjoyed listening to everyone's comments tonight. One of the things that I picked up is I sat on a city council in a Charlotte suburb for 6 years, and this reminds me a lot of our council meetings. Anytime somebody's property is affected, or they think their tax is going to go up, or they're being told what to do with their homes, that gets them in a town hall real quick. And I see that going on here, and I certainly appreciate all the comments, but I would like to think back to the first time newcomers like myself ever came to Southport. And myself personally, being from Charlotte and a Charlotte native, one of the things that I'm always proud to tell people back in Charlotte and all over the Carolinas, hey, I have a home in Southport. And the first thing they think is a wow factor. Wow, I love that town. And I think for a second that everyone in here should pretend you don't have property here. Pretend you're a visitor. Pretend you're coming into this town for the first time. I remember the first time I came into this town was April 1999. I grew up going to Myrtle Beach all my life. And I remember coming into this town, seeing the gorgeous old buildings, the beautiful trees, the lighthouses, the ships, and all this history in this town. And I just could not wait to tell my wife, hey, we've got to come down here and see this place. And a lot of people want to come to a coastal town. And what Southport has is so unique, and it's fun to tell people about, is you've got this sense of history here that goes back to 1792. You've got beautiful buildings and homes going back to the 1800s. And everybody up here on this committee, we want to preserve that. We don't want to tell you what to do, but we certainly want to preserve it for future generations. When people come into this town, that they see the yacht basin, they see Moore Street, they see the homes on Howell Street, and maybe perhaps you see a sign and it talks about the historic district. So you've got people coming into town and it's like, hey, I want to see this historic district. I want to see what it's all about. And that's what I think we're trying to preserve here, is to continue to give this town a wow factor. The gentleman mentioned Charlotte. I'm from Charlotte, born and raised. One of the things that Charlotte is a beautiful, big city, a major league, big time city. But one thing that we don't have in Charlotte anymore that a lot of people complain about is we knocked all our history down. We knocked every bit of it down. We had some beautiful, gorgeous old buildings, city halls, things like that. We knocked them down for skyscrapers. And we don't have this sense of history in Charlotte anymore. Charlotte's a lot like Dallas and Atlanta. But Southport, people come to Southport and they just love the charm of this town. And I think that's what makes this town so special, is the beauty of this town, the old trees, Franklin Square Park, the little shops and things like that. And that's what we want to preserve. And if you just think back, we certainly don't want to mess up your property and devalue your property. We want to make your property be more valuable. Now, I understand that property values have gone nuts. Prices have gone up on homes. I understand that. Nobody wants to pay. If you're fixed income, retired, you're not wanting to pay more taxes. You're not necessarily wanting to see your $700,000 home go up to $1 million. We totally understand that. But some of this is kind of out of our control. But the main thing I believe everybody up here is trying to do is we want to preserve the charm of this town and make it that special place when people come here that they have a wow factor. So I appreciate every one of you and hearing every one of you's comments. And like I said, I moved here in 2019, so I don't know you personally, but I do feel like I know your passion for your homes in this town. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tal. Josh?
Well, I don't want to tag on too much here, but I have to admit I lived 25 years in Charlotte, and I will say I don't want to happen here what happened in Charlotte. I remember when I went away to school at NC State, and people in Raleigh used to say, you know, there's not any historic buildings left in Charlotte. And I said, sure there are. There's a couple. There's the Masonic Lodge right there on Tryon Street. And I went home during semester break one year, and it was gone because Wells Fargo had built a parking deck. So anyway, that's my only Charlotte tale. But I don't live in the historic district, that's true, but I am very passionate about preserving the character of Southport. But I also hear and understand what a lot of people out here have said. I don't want to overregulate it. I don't want to become another Savannah, Georgia, or a Charleston, South Carolina, where we tell everybody what paint color to use and, you know, what trim you use on the side of your door. What I want to do is just make sure that in the next generation, after I'm gone, and people come to Southport, they still have the look of Southport and the character is still in place. It's like what Charles keeps talking about, the promote, prevent, and protect. That's what I'm really all about. And I want to use my architectural expertise to, I think we are going to be looking at things like buildings, and one of the key things in historic neighborhoods is sort of the massing of structures, and you want to make sure that you don't have a four-story building going up next to a single-story building. You want to keep the scale of the buildings, you know, related to the other buildings nearby, and I think that's really important. And we know that some of these lots are very small, and as Mo talked about earlier, most of the lots in the historic district are probably non-compliant, so the setbacks are going to be eased up a little bit. And honestly, if the structure is such that reducing the setback a little bit in order to help preserve the character of the building, I'm going to be in favor of that. I want to preserve, you know, the look of Southport. So I think it's important, but I don't want to overregulate it.
Thank you, sir. Rick?
Well, I want to start off by just thanking everybody for being here with your input. It's been very important to us. We don't have all the answers. Don't think that this is our answer guide or think what you have to do. I don't have a Charlotte tale because I didn't live in Charlotte, but I lived in the town of Wake Forest, and when I moved there, they gave me a book about 1.5 inches thick. This is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And there was no input. I couldn't say, but it's not the way it is. You follow these rules, period. This is not like that. As Charles mentioned, this is a living document where we all have input, ways to present our cases that if it makes sense and it's a good idea, better than our idea, let's do it. Let's do that. Let's not handicap you and say, no, sorry, that doesn't say that in the rules. That's not the case. And our rules basically are guidelines. If you ever played sports, football, basketball, baseball, there's guidelines you have to stay within. But what you can do within the guidelines, there's a lot of different things. If you're in football, you can pass, you can run, you can kick. Doesn't mean you can only do one thing. So we're going to take that into consideration too. And I'm glad to see one of our aldermen here tonight. Alderman Davis is here. And I'd like to invite, through Ms. Davis, our 2 new aldermen, who are Mr. Spencer and Ms. Kelly, to either contact Charles or myself or Mo or any of our other members here, or come to our next meeting so they can get up to speed on this, because they're going to be part of the voting group that makes this happen. So, Ms. Davis, you can kind of get that point across. That would be a good thing. But that's all I really have to say. But thank you, guys. We really appreciate your input.
Thank you, sir. Alexis?
I don't have much to say, but as a child, I remember the Sawdust Trail. I remember when there were 2 lights in Southport, and that was it. I remember Whitley's Bench, the kerfuffle about whether we should plant the tree back or not. So, and those are the things I love about Southport. I love Southport, I love the look of Southport, and I would not want it to change. I don't want to live any other place. I chose to come back home because this is home. I could have lived any place else, but I would prefer to be here because of the charm of the city. I don't want to be in a beach area where there are glittering lights all over the place, and I just love Southport. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Jim?
First off, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and as everyone else has said, your comments, your suggestions, your ideas, we take these seriously. Like Charles has said, this is a living document. It's guidelines. I like to think of it as being black and white. Black and white means there's gray. It's not black or white. Black or white insinuates, it says there's no gray, this is the way it is. This is gray. So the whole goal of this is, like we said, protect what we've got left. In the 30 plus years that I've lived here in downtown, in the historic district, I've seen a lot disappear. A lot. I've seen a lot of change. And the whole goal of this is to protect what we have left. And it's not to make everybody's lives more difficult. It's to maintain that quality of life. So please feel free to talk to us, give us your suggestions in public hearings, or take us aside. We will take those ideas, we will take your suggestions, and we will take your concerns, and we will pay attention to them. Thank you.
Thank you to the commission tonight, and thank you, citizens, for being here and giving us your input. We're going to take your comments. I've written detailed notes about each of you speaking, and we're going to bring them up at our next meeting. Our next meeting will be, our regular meeting will be December the 6th at 4 p.m. at the Indian Trail Meeting Hall, and we will take into consideration all of your comments and rework our document again. I've lived in Southport all my life. I heard my grandfather, who was assistant chief on the fire department, talk about one of the saddest days in his life was when the Southport High School burned and that building was taken down. That was one of the saddest days of his life. I also heard him talk about the Miller Hotel burning on the corner of Bay and Howe, and different historic structures. One of the saddest days in my life was when the building that was right here, January 1995, burned, the USO building. I fought that fire. I was working at the city hall. I was at the police department when the call came in that morning at 5 o'clock, and the building here burned to the ground. That was a sad day. Another sad day was in the 1970s. As a child, I remember when they pulled away the Frying Pan Lightship off of the waterfront. What a sad day that was. Hurricane Bertha came to Southport, and it tore down the Whittler's Bench tree. That tree has not been there. They've tried to plant a tree a couple of times, but that was a sad day when I saw that tree split. I still have a piece of the cedar from the middle of that tree that I went down and got out of that tree. It's at my house today. And another sad day was when they tore down the old hospital on Howe Street. So what is this commission about? This commission is about preserving the character that we have. And that's the important thing, trying to save and protect the landmarks, the vistas, the buildings, the historic nature of Southport. So that's what we're trying to do. And we can do that when we work together with citizens, with advisory boards, with the Board of Aldermen. But there has to be a collective effort of everyone working together to protect what we have here in Southport. So thank you for being here tonight. If there's no further comments, we'll move to F in our agenda. Any other business that needs to be brought before the commission?
One thing.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Potter, the line goes right through the front half of your building. So you're in the district.
Under G, announcements. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.